Hollywood can make you a legend overnight, then erase you just as fast. One scandal, one powerful enemy, one disastrous mistake, and suddenly the cameras stop flashing and the phone stops ringing. These actors once ruled the screen, but behind their shocking disappearances are stories of betrayal, blacklisting controversy, and brutal falls from fame. So what really happened when
Ready?
Hollywood turned its back on them? Number 1. Brendan Fraser. There was a time when Brendan Fraser looked absolutely untouchable. He swung through the jungle in George of the Jungle, fought ancient monsters in The Mummy, and became the kind of Hollywood leading man studios could build an entire blockbuster around. He was handsome, funny, fearless, and seemingly everywhere. Then, almost without warning, the man who once filled theaters began disappearing from them. Fans wondered what happened. Hollywood, as usual, was not exactly rushing to explain. Behind that vanishing act was a story far darker than a few bad movies. Fraser later alleged that Philip Burke, then a powerful figure in the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, sexually assaulted him at a Beverly Hills hotel in 2003. Burke disputed Fraser's account. Fraser said the experience left him deeply shaken, and he later wondered whether speaking up had damaged his standing in the industry. But that was not the whole story. Years of brutal stunt work had wrecked his body, leading to multiple surgeries, while personal struggles added even more weight to a career already slipping away. Fraser returned in The Whale as a broken, isolated teacher carrying enormous grief, and suddenly audiences were looking at him differently. The applause became standing ovations. The forgotten action hero became an awards favorite. In 2023, Brendan Fraser won the Academy Award for Best Actor. After years of pained silence and speculation, the man Hollywood seemed to have left behind walked onto its biggest stage and took home its biggest acting prize. Funny how quickly the room remembers your name when you survive long enough to make them clap again. Number 2. Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan was never built to play Hollywood's obedient little princess. With Scream, Jawbreaker, and later Charmed, she became one of the most recognizable faces of the late 1990s and early 2000s. She was sharp, fearless, glamorous, and just unpredictable enough to keep cameras chasing her. But while audiences saw a rising star, McGowan says something much darker was happening behind the velvet ropes, something powerful people allegedly preferred to keep buried. In 2017, McGowan publicly accused producer Harvey Weinstein of raping her after an encounter at the Sundance Film Festival in 1997. Weinstein denied allegations of non-consensual sex. McGowan had received a $100,000 settlement connected to the incident years earlier, but she later said the real punishment came afterward. Roles became harder to find, whispers followed her name, and she believed Weinstein's influence helped poison her career. Funny how an industry obsessed with heroic women on screen could become remarkably uncomfortable when one started fighting back in real life. As allegations against Weinstein exploded across Hollywood, she became one of the loudest voices demanding accountability, transforming from actress into activist and symbol of rebellion. The career she once imagined may never have unfolded the way she wanted, but her silence did not survive either. Hollywood had given Rose McGowan fame, beauty, red carpets, and applause. Then came the part no studio wanted to film the actress they allegedly pushed toward the shadows, stepping back into the light, and naming the power she believed had tried to erase her. Number 3. Charlie Sheen. At his peak, Charlie Sheen was not simply a television star. He was a money-printing machine. 2.5 Men made him the highest-paid actor on television reportedly earning around $1.8 million per episode. Before that came Platoon Wall Street and Major League. Fame Money Mansion's headlines. Sheen had the Hollywood jackpot in his hands. The only problem was that he also seemed determined to set the winning ticket on fire. Then 2011 arrived like a wrecking ball. Years of battles with drugs and alcohol collided with a spectacular public meltdown. Sheen entered rehab, attacked 2.5 men, creator Chuck Lorre, in interviews, and transformed his private chaos into prime-time entertainment. Warner Brothers eventually fired him from the show. One day he was television royalty. The next, his character was gone while Hollywood watched the explosion from a very safe distance. Sheen tried to turn disaster into another act. His wild interviews produced phrases like winning, and for a moment the meltdown itself became its own bizarre brand. He returned with Anger Management in 2012, which eventually reached 100 episodes, but the old magic never fully returned. The massive paychecks shrank, major opportunities became harder to find, and the man who once seemed impossible to avoid suddenly became remarkably easy for Hollywood to ignore. By 2018, in court documents seeking lower child support payments, Sheen said his income had fallen dramatically, that steady work was difficult to find, and that he had been blacklisted from many parts of the entertainment industry. Whether Hollywood truly locked the door or simply decided the risk was no longer worth the paycheck remains debatable. Charlie Sheen went from earning millions for making America laugh to becoming one of Hollywood's most spectacular warnings about what happens when fame stops being a spotlight and starts becoming gasoline. Number 4. Mel Gibson. Few stars ever owned Hollywood quite like Mel Gibson. Mad Max made him dangerous, Lethal Weapon made him irresistible, and Braveheart turned him into Oscar-winning royalty. By the 1990s, Gibson could act, direct, command massive budgets, and still pack theaters. He had reached the mountaintop. Unfortunately, the fastest way down was waiting inside his own car. In July 2006, Gibson was arrested for driving under the influence in Malibu. During the arrest, he unleashed anti-Semitic remarks that exploded across the media. Gibson later apologized, calling his words unacceptable, but the damage was immediate. ABC dropped a planned project connected to him, public condemnation poured in, and one of Hollywood's safest stars suddenly became one of its most radioactive names. The trouble did not end there. More controversies followed, including leaked recordings involving his former partner, Oksana Grigorieva. Major studios became far more cautious, his acting appearances grew less prestigious, and the red carpet that once seemed permanently reserved for him became noticeably quieter. Hollywood loves redemption stories, of course, but apparently it prefers them after a very long commercial break. Then came Hacksaw Ridge in 2016. Gibson returned to the director's chair with a brutal war drama that earned major acclaim and 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Director for Gibson. It did not erase the past, nor did everyone welcome him back. But it proved something uncomfortable. Mel Gibson had damaged his own reputation spectacularly, yet the filmmaking talent that made him powerful in the first place had never completely disappeared. Number 5. Roseanne Barr. Roseanne Barr had already conquered television once. Her sitcom, Roseanne, became a cultural phenomenon, turning a working-class family into prime-time royalty and making Barr one of the most recognizable comedians in America. Then, decades later, she pulled off something Hollywood rarely gives anyone: a second coronation. The 2018 revival exploded in the ratings, millions came back, and suddenly Roseanne was not yesterday's star. She was television's comeback queen all over again. In May 2018, Barr posted a racist message about Valerie Jarrett, a former senior advisor to President Barack Obama. Outrage spread almost instantly. Cast members condemned the Post producer Wanda Sykes, announced she was leaving, and ABC did not wait for the scandal to cool down. Within hours, the network canceled Roseanne, one of its biggest shows. Years of rebuilding a career disappeared faster than most people could refresh their phones. Barr deleted the tweet and apologized later, saying she regretted what she had written. But the machine had already stopped. Hundreds of people connected to the production suddenly lost their jobs, and the revival continued without her under a new title, The Connors. Imagine becoming the face of a television empire, losing it, rebuilding it, decades later, and then watching your own name vanish from the front door because of something you typed before breakfast. Roseanne Barr did not slowly fade away through forgotten movies or empty theaters. Her comeback was alive, profitable, and culturally relevant right up until the moment it was not. One morning, she was leading a hit sitcom. By that evening, ABC had cut ties with the show carrying her name. Fame usually dies by inches. Roseanne's fell off a cliff, proving that in modern Hollywood, sometimes the distance between a triumphant comeback and total catastrophe is only 280 characters. Number 6. Tippi Hedren. Tippi Hedren did not slowly climb into Hollywood. Alfred Hitchcock practically pulled her out of a television commercial and dropped her into The Birds, one of the most terrifying films of the 1960s. Suddenly, the former model was everywhere, elegant, mysterious, and standing beside one of cinema's most powerful directors. To the public, it looked like a fairy tale. Behind the camera, Hedren would later say it felt much closer to a trap. According to Hedren, Hitchcock became increasingly obsessed with her during their work together. She alleged that he made unwanted sexual advances, tried to control who could speak to her, and created an atmosphere that became deeply uncomfortable. During the infamous bird attack sequence, real birds were used for days as Hedren was scratched and exhausted. She later believed some of that treatment was connected to her refusal to return Hitchcock's personal interest. The tension exploded during Marnie. Hedren said Hitchcock made another unwanted advance and that she finally told him she wanted out. According to her account, his response was chilling. He threatened to ruin her career and then kept her tied to a contract while opportunities elsewhere slipped away. Hedren later said other filmmakers wanted her, but Hitchcock would not release her. Her career never reached the heights The Birds seemed to promise, but Hedren refused to let that become the ending. Decades later, she spoke publicly about what she said happened and delivered a sentence sharper than any Hitchcock twist. He ruined her career, but he did not ruin her life. She continued acting, devoted herself to animal advocacy, and became the matriarch of a Hollywood family that includes Melanie Griffith and Dakota Johnson. Hitchcock may have controlled the contract. He did not get the final scene. Number 7. Ashley Judd. In the 1990s, Ashley Judd looked like Hollywood's next unstoppable leading lady. Double Jeopardy, Kiss, The Girls, and Heat put her beside some of the biggest names in the business. She had beauty, talent, box office appeal, and the kind of career actresses spend decades chasing. Yet behind the premieres and magazine covers, Judd says one encounter with a powerful producer quietly changed the direction of everything. Judd alleged that Harvey Weinstein lured her to a hotel room in 1997 under the pretense of discussing work, then made unwanted sexual advances. She refused. According to Judd, what followed was not an explosive public fight, but something far more dangerous in Hollywood whispers. She claimed Weinstein began damaging her reputation inside the industry, turning potential employers against her, while she had no idea what was being said behind closed doors. Peter Jackson, the director behind the Lord of the Rings trilogy, revealed that while he was considering actresses for the films, the company then run by Harvey Weinstein and his brother Bob warned him against hiring Ashley Judd and Mira Sorvino, describing them as difficult to work with. Jackson said he believed the warning at the time, but later suspected he had been fed false information as part of a smear campaign. Suddenly, one of Hollywood's darkest rumors had a name, a movie, and a director willing to say what happened. Judd fought back in court, accusing Weinstein of damaging her career and reputation. Weinstein denied interfering with her opportunities. But the irony was brutal. Hollywood makes endless movies about brave women confronting powerful villains. Yet Judd's real battle was happening far from the cameras. She may have lost roles she never even knew were within reach, but years later she helped expose the machinery that she believed had been working against her all along. Number 8. Nicolas Cage. There was a time when Nicolas Cage did not need an introduction. His name alone could sell a movie. The Rock Face Off, Con Air, Lord of War, Leaving Las Vegas. He could scream like a maniac, whisper like a ghost, play an action hero, then turn around and win an Oscar for playing a broken alcoholic. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Cage was not simply famous. He was gloriously unpredictable, and Hollywood loved every strange second of it. Then movies such as The Wicker Man and Ghost Rider drew mixed reactions, while more forgettable projects began piling up at an almost unbelievable speed. Audiences started asking the same question every time another Nicolas Cage poster appeared. Why was an Oscar-winning actor saying yes to almost everything? The answer, according to years of reporting surrounding his finances, may have had less to do with artistic passion and much more to do with enormous financial pressure. Cage faced serious money problems, including tax debts, and his extravagant spending became part of Hollywood legend. His lifestyle sounded less like a celebrity budget and more like someone playing Monopoly after 3 espressos. As the bills grew, so did the number of movies. Big studio blockbusters gave way to smaller productions, some released with barely a whisper, and the actor who once ruled opening weekends became famous for simply never stopping. But Nicolas Cage did something most fallen stars cannot. He turned the chaos into a second identity. Instead of disappearing, he leaned into the weirdness, taking wild roles and reminding audiences that beneath all the memes was still a fearless performer. Films like Mandy Pig and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent brought renewed praise. Hollywood may have stopped treating him like its golden prince, but Cage survived by becoming something even harder to erase, a legend too strange to stay buried. Number 9. Hayden Christensen. Before the galaxy knew his name, Hayden Christensen was already proving he could act. Life as a House earned him serious attention, and Shattered Glass showed a quiet intensity that made Hollywood critics take notice. Then came the role actors dream about for a lifetime. Christensen was chosen to become Anakin Skywalker, the young man destined to transform into Darth Vader. It should have launched him into permanent superstardom. Instead, it nearly swallowed him whole. The Star Wars prequels became global blockbusters, but the reaction to Christensen was brutal. Critics attacked his performance, fans mocked the dialogue, and lines about sand became internet punchlines that refused to die. Much of the writing and direction was beyond his control, yet his face became attached to everything audiences disliked about the films. Imagine landing one of the most famous roles in cinema history, only to discover that millions of people now recognize you for all the wrong reasons. After Revenge of the Sith, the expected Hollywood explosion never really came. Movies such as Jumper brought temporary attention, but other projects failed to generate the same excitement. Christensen gradually stepped away from the spotlight, spending more time away from Los Angeles and even working on a farm. For years, Hollywood treated Anakin Skywalker like an old embarrassment, while a younger generation of fans quietly began reassessing the prequels. In 2022, Christensen returned as Anakin and Darth Vader in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And this time the reception felt completely different. Fans cheered. Convention appearances became emotional celebrations. The actor once blamed for damaging Star Wars was suddenly welcomed like a lost piece of its history. Hollywood had spent years treating Hayden Christensen like yesterday's mistake. The fans eventually decided he deserved a second ending. Number 10. Tobey Maguire. For an entire generation, Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man. When Sam Raimi's first film exploded into theaters in 2002, Maguire turned awkward Peter Parker into a global icon. 2 sequels followed millions of fans, memorized every scene, and his face became inseparable from the red and blue suit. He had achieved the dream most actors spend their lives chasing. When Spider-Man 4 collapsed, Maguire suddenly lost the franchise that had defined nearly a decade of his career. Hollywood expected him to move easily into another blockbuster era, but the transition never really happened. He appeared in respected projects such as Brothers and The Great Gatsby, yet his screen appearances became increasingly rare. Part of that was choice. Maguire became more selective, focused on producing, and seemed surprisingly comfortable stepping away from the relentless celebrity machine. Then Maguire returned as Peter Parker in Spider-Man: No Way Home alongside Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland. The reaction was enormous. The man who had spent years away from superhero fame walked back into the suite and instantly reminded audiences why they loved him. Tobey Maguire never truly disappeared. Hollywood simply learned that sometimes the strongest comeback does not require becoming someone new. Sometimes all it takes is hearing the old theme music again. Number 11. Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl once looked like Hollywood's perfect success story. Grey's Anatomy turned her into a television sweetheart, while Knocked Up and 27 Dresses pushed her straight into movie stardom. She was beautiful, funny, confident, and suddenly everywhere. Studios saw a new queen of romantic comedy. Audiences saw a star who could seemingly do no wrong. Then Heigl started doing something Hollywood has never been particularly famous for rewarding. She spoke her mind. The first major shock came when Heigl withdrew her name from Emmy consideration, saying she did not feel the material given to her on Grey's Anatomy justified a nomination. The comment landed like a grenade inside a hit television show. Reports of tension with producers and writers grew louder, and eventually her character, Izzy Stevens, disappeared. Winning an Emmy had helped make her a star. Questioning the writing behind that same success made the room considerably colder. Then came Knocked Up. Heigl later criticized the film as somewhat sexist, arguing that the women were portrayed as humorless, while the men got to have all the fun. Her comments sparked a huge debate, but they also strengthened an increasingly dangerous Hollywood label, Difficult. Suddenly, every complaint, negotiation, and disagreement seemed to become another brick in a reputation that followed her from set to set. Heigl kept working, but the enormous momentum faded. Several romantic comedies failed to recreate her earlier magic, while the stories about her attitude often became louder than the movies themselves. Years later, she acknowledged making mistakes, but also pushed back against the idea that expressing an opinion should destroy a woman's career. Maybe Hollywood did not officially close the door on Katherine Heigl. It simply made the doorway narrower every time she refused to smile and stay quiet. Number 12. Monique. Winning an Oscar is supposed to change everything. For Monique, it did just not in the way anyone expected. Her terrifying performance as Mary in Precious stunned audiences and critics, earning her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in 2010. She had already conquered comedy and television with The Parkers, but now Hollywood had officially stamped her as serious talent. The doors should have flown open. Instead, they seemed to quietly close. The trouble began during the Oscar campaign. Monique said she was pressured to attend promotional events without additional compensation and refused to play along with what she viewed as Hollywood politics. She later claimed that director Lee Daniels told her she had been blackballed because she did not campaign the way powerful people expected. Daniels acknowledged that her approach created tension, though the exact extent of any industry blacklist remains disputed. After Precious, the silence became impossible to ignore. Major film roles did not arrive in the flood. Everyone predicted. Monique publicly criticized Daniels, Tyler Perry, and Oprah Winfrey, arguing that she had been punished for refusing to behave the way Hollywood wanted. Suddenly, the actress who had just given one of the most celebrated performances of the decade was spending more time explaining why she was not working than promoting new movies. Apparently, an Oscar can get you a gold statue, but it does not come with a lifetime warranty. She returned to stand up, challenged Netflix over what she said was unequal pay, and eventually reunited professionally with Lee Daniels years after their feud. Her story remains one of Hollywood's strangest contradictions. She reached the industry's highest stage, held an Oscar in her hands, and then watched opportunities shrink instead of multiply. Monique did not fall because audiences forgot her talent. Number 13. Taylor Lautner. In 2008, Taylor Lautner walked into Twilight as Jacob Black and almost instantly became a global obsession. The muscles, the smile, the impossible love triangle with Bella and Edward. Everything about him screamed future superstar. By the time the franchise ended, Twilight had earned billions worldwide. Lautner was one of Hollywood's highest-paid young actors, and studios seemed ready to build the next decade around him. Then the moon went down. His first major attempt to escape Jacob came with Abduction in 2011. The action thriller was supposed to prove he could carry a movie on his own. Instead, critics tore it apart, and the box office failed to create the new franchise Hollywood wanted. More projects followed, including Grown Ups 2 and Run the Tide, but none came close to the cultural explosion of Twilight. The werewolf had left Forks, but audiences apparently had trouble leaving the werewolf behind. Lautner had been made so famous by one character that every new role was forced to compete with Jacob Black. The original article also points to his high asking price after Twilight as another possible obstacle, since studios were suddenly being asked to pay superstar money without superstar box office guarantees. Hollywood loves creating overnight sensations. Paying for them after the sensation cools down is apparently less romantic. Lautner never completely vanished. He continued acting in television and film, explored producing and voice work, and remained connected to a loyal fan base. But the massive career everyone predicted never arrived. His story is not really about talent disappearing. It is about how brutally fast Hollywood can change its mind. One moment, Taylor Lautner was standing shirtless in front of millions of screaming fans. The next, the industry was quietly asking whether Jacob Black had been the role of a lifetime or the cage that came with it. Number 14. Jim Caviezel. Before 2004, Jim Caviezel looked like a serious Hollywood actor on the rise. He had appeared in The Thin Red Line Frequency and The Count of Monte Cristo, building a reputation for intense dramatic roles. Then Mel Gibson offered him the part of Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. Caviezel accepted, even though Gibson reportedly warned him that playing such a controversial role might change his career forever. The movie became a worldwide phenomenon, earning hundreds of millions of dollars while igniting fierce arguments over its graphic violence and religious themes. Caviezel suddenly had one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. But instead of opening every studio door, the role seemed to make Hollywood more cautious. According to Caviezel, major opportunities became much harder to find after the film. For years, he continued working, but the giant movie career many expected never arrived. He eventually found renewed television success with Person of Interest, proving he had not lost his ability to carry a major production. Still, the shadow of Jesus followed him everywhere. In Hollywood, being unforgettable is usually the dream. Caviezel discovered that sometimes being unforgettable for one role can become the problem. Yet he has repeatedly said he does not regret taking the part. Faith mattered more to him than the possible consequences, and he has remained outspoken about his beliefs ever since. The Passion of the Christ made Jim Caviezel famous around the world, but it may also have permanently changed how Hollywood saw him. One extraordinary role gave him immortality on screen, while possibly costing him the career everyone thought would come next. Number 15. Isaiah Washington. Isaiah Washington once had exactly the kind of role actors dream about. As Dr. Preston Burke on Grey's Anatomy, he was brilliant, confident, complicated, and part of one of television's hottest shows. The series was exploding. Audiences knew his face, and Washington seemed perfectly positioned for years of primetime success. Then one word turned the operating room into a career emergency. During an argument on set, Washington used a homophobic slur. The controversy became even worse months later, when he repeated the same slur while speaking to reporters after the Golden Globes. He later apologized publicly, admitting the word was unacceptable and saying he had hurt his colleagues, fans, and the gay community. But by then, the damage was spreading faster than any television drama could contain. In June 2007, ABC confirmed that Washington's contract would not be renewed. Dr. Burke disappeared, and Washington suddenly went from starring in one of America's biggest shows to fighting a reputation that followed him everywhere. He continued acting, but the momentum was never the same. Hollywood can forgive bad ratings. A scandal that embarrasses an entire hit show is apparently a much more expensive diagnosis. Years later, Washington briefly returned to Grey's Anatomy in 2014 for Christina Yang's farewell storyline and continued appearing in other projects, including The 100. But his career never returned to its earlier trajectory. One moment, he was helping make Grey's Anatomy television history. The next, the biggest story attached to his name was no longer happening in front of the camera.